I can so as I was saying, the essence of this is to guide you so that you have the background knowledge about of Python before you begin AI with our experts in natural language processing, machine learning, and computer vision and the rest. So for you to continue with two, all you simply have to do is type Google Colab and you Google this Google Colab. That's the environment we use, and you hit the first Google Colab on the search that you can see. Um, Once we get there, okay, this is the environment. So we are going to go to new notebook, okay. Okay, sorry about that. Let me use my I think I have it here already. So you just type Google Colab, and this is just to help you know how to go about this. It's not really for me, it's for you to know how to put the link. It has been committed to GitHub. So all you do is you click on this GitHub here. Then once you do that, you paste the, okay, it has to authenticate. So once it's finished authenticating, which it has done with mine, I can simply paste the path to um, this. That's for the notebook. Then I can click on that. So while it's loading, okay, I think this is, sorry, it's like I did something wrong. It shouldn't take us back to a new, okay, we'll come to GitHub. Then we paste this, search. Okay, so we click on it. This is it here. Click on that. So okay, so once again, thank you for being here. I remain Joseph Itopa. I'm here to get you through this machine Python tutorial in order for you to understand the basics of Python, which will be needed in AI, so that our experts will not take you from the beginning, from the scratch anymore. They will have to start from the application. So we had some little exercise last week, and the first one, we said you should write a test program to check if a number is odd or even. So we decide to instantiate the variable here, num, and then we take an integer input from the user. Then this mathematical equation here, num, then the modulo sign of 2. Whenever you divide, you use modulus, you do modulus, you don't have a remainder. If you have a remainder, according to the equation, the if condition we're using here, it has to check if it is equal to 0. If it is equal to 0, when you don't have a remainder, that is even. When it has a remainder, that is odd. So we keep it very simple, and that's for the first one. So Okay, let me see, 7. Okay, it's an odd number. You see, that's quite very simple. You can also do the same for even number. Let's say 8. Number you enter is an even number. So that's that for number 1. Then number 2, here we have we can also instantiate the variable, or we can decide to forget about it. It's not really necessary, but the essence of that most time is to just keep your programming in a more efficient way. So if you can't hear me, just let me know. Here you enter an input, and the input is your name or anybody's name, which is a string. It takes the input and display the output, which is another simple exercise. I hope you did. You try it. So according to what we have here, say hello Joe. Then the third one, which is create a program that reads the length and width of a farmer's field from the user in meters. Though I didn't put into consideration the meters, but having read this, there are so many ways you can do it. You can just read the input into any variables and just perform some. We are not supposed to calculate the area. We are just meant to output the number. So, but in this case, I decided to store them in a list, instantiate the list, then store the first input in the first column of the list, then store the second input in the second column of the list. So the next thing we did is to just print out the variable or the value stored in the variable. So in this case, let's say 50, that's the first one, and 20, that's the second one. So we can print everything out, and we can also print them individually. So starting from 0 and then 1. So what is stored here? This is the address to this. The first one is 0. The second address, which is pointing to where the value will be stored, is 1. So that's why we use this to feed them out. We'll talk more about them today. I believe you did your homework. And here, the fourth one is a little bit complicated, but not that complicated. It's just to get you more engaged. And here we have to write a program that determines the name of the shape from its number of sites. Read the number of sites from the user and then report the appropriate name as part of the meaningful message. So it is very simple. What we are meant to do is just to read numbers and be able to say, okay, this is what the number is, and that is what. So in this case, we had 3, 4, 5, 6 with their name stored in a dictionary. We talked about list, tuple, and dictionary last time. So we had this, and then we store these variables. This is the key, and this is the value for each for the key 3. So each key and its value were all listed in this. We are declared in the variable polygon. They were all kept there. Then we instantiate number. So we take the input as an integer. Then once we take in the input, we print it out to be sure that's what we actually entered. It's not really necessary. It's just for you to play around with it. Then we had the if number, the if condition to check through each of these key. So if number in polygon, so it's checking the key, which of the number you've entered actually match the keys in the variable polygon. So once it gets a match, it prints out, it uses the number you entered to print out the value of that key. So we are going to test it, and if it is out of range, it says it's out of range. So we're going to test it. It's okay, let's say 6. entered 6, and 6 is what? Hexagon. So it just takes the input, use the input to search through the polygon. Once it finds it, it tells it takes the number polygon.get. Get is a method, so it takes the number in to find the value. So if you still want to say, let's say 34, number is out of range. So it's very simple, and I believe you did it. So today we're going to attributes and data structure, and this is very important. Here under attributes and data structure, we'll be talking about attributes such as while loop, for loop, break and continue, for with, if, else, and do while. So we'll talk about that. Then we'll talk about list, dictionary, and tuple, though we've talked about them last 2 weeks. So we'll also talk about it today. Then you are encouraged to go and play with this, study this, iterating over a list, iterating over a dictionary. Because if you have known what dictionary list tuple is, and you also have idea of iterating, we believe you should be able to apply that iteration on the variables or the data structure. So we'll go straight to the first one. Attributes. The first one we discuss is while loop, and it's actually very common in almost every programming language. It's easy to understand, but if you don't know it before, you may find it difficult. So take a look at this. This is how while loop actually works. Start. Once it starts, it checks the condition. If the condition is true, it processes, then go back to check the condition again. If it is true, it processes. It keeps repeating itself over and over until it gets a false. Once it gets a false within this condition stage, it come here and break out of the loop. It stop looping. So this is the syntax. You just have while, then condition, then this block or statement of code inside. It's not difficult. I believe you understand it better. So we have this exercise here, this very simple example rather. Count, let's say we initiate it with 1, and then we are using a while loop. I'm saying if count is less than 8, it should print count. Then it should do an increment here. What you have here, I think I explained this the other time, it's just a simple mathematics, but in a more in a short form. So what you have there is actually this. You have this to be equal to count this one. So this is what you have in there. This is the same as this, but instead of keeping them, it's just kind of too, we are not interested in the quantity of the code, we are more interested in what the code can do. So we keep it short. That's why you see it short above. So let's run this, and okay, we have a syntax error. Expected an indented block. Yes, do not forget this. I have said this time without number, and I think I also left this for a purpose. Here's one thing: whenever you declare either a special method like if conditions or loop conditions or loop methods, whatever their keywords, any keywords either for looping or for conditional statement, you have to always indent before you write the next code. So if you do this, you can say initialize the count 1, 2, 3 till 7. It stopped at 7 because we said less than 8. We didn't say less than equal to 8 also. So if we do this, we're now saying less than or equal to 8. If you run it, you see it includes 8. So that is basically what it is. That is a while loop for you. Then we have a do while loop. For a do while loop, it's kind of a little bit, there are some stuff that have been taken out of Python, such as do while loop, such as switch statement, and you can find other ways of handling this, though most times we still find a way to hard code it. Let's say, for instance, for a do while loop in Python, just say, okay, we instantiate a variable, we store 10 in it, and said while is true, it should keep doing this mathematics, which is a is equal to a minus 1. In this case, that will be 10 minus 1, you have 9, then it prints 9. So if a is less than 7, break, else done. So it keeps doing this over and over again until it gets this condition, then breaks out of the loop. Let me not talk too much, let me show you the instance. Okay, you see there's also another indentation problem here. Say on indent does not match any outer indentation level. So what they are simply telling us to do is this. Like as I was saying, if you do this, you can see the indentation. Now it's very important. Then you check here again. If you go like this is where it should be. So any mistake in this may become a problem. So you can see 9, 8, 7, 6, then done. So the condition is that if it is less than 7, it should break out of the loop. So the do here is actually while it's true, while the condition remains true, it should keep running. It should keep doing what it should be doing. This is the one handling the do part of it, the if condition. So it keeps repeating itself while the while loop also is working. But once it meets the condition, it breaks out of the loop. Then we'll talk about this definite and infinite loop. You may be thinking, why is it important? Well, as you can see, when we know the exact number of iteration, then it is a definite loop. But when we have no idea the exact number of iteration, it becomes an indefinite loop. So, and you'll be wondering, where does this apply? Is there a possibility that we don't know the exact number of iteration? Yes, there is very possible. We are taking a user's input and we don't know what the user will enter or maybe mistakenly enter. So it's very possible. So we now have to find a way of handling an indefinite loop. But before we talk about handling it, do you even know what it is? That is why we have it here. A definite and versus an indefinite loop. So we'll first take a look an example of a definite loop. So we enter a number. In this case, we said 5. Okay, here is it. What it does is that we initialize the variable, then we take in an input, an integer input. So we now use the while loop and said, okay, you should keep the number here is 1, right? As long as the number is less than or equal to what the user entered, it should keep printing. So the moment it goes beyond that condition, it stops printing. Or when it's true, counting from 1 to 5. In this case, I entered 5. That's what you see here. So I entered 5, and then it starts counting. 5 is less than, in this case, number which is 1. 1 is here. 1 is less than 5. Let me try another example. Let's say 8. So you can see that 1 is less than 8. Stop is 8. That's the input it took. So we'll keep running it, and the loops keep iterating until it gets to a particular number, which is what greater than 8. Then it stops automatically. We have an indefinite loop here. So basically what we do, we declare a variable, then we assign it a boolean. Boolean is true or false. So in this case, we are using false, and we are assigning it to this variable done. And then we announce a while not done, which is while not false. basically it can still be written as while true, something like this. So what we are doing is just playing around with the code, and sometimes we just make it complicated for the fun of it. So here we have done, and we have the variable false assigned, the boolean false assigned to this variable done. Then we are now using it to set a condition and said while it's not like that, it should take an input, and then if the entry is equal to 100, done, which is where we change the value of the done now to true, else we should print the entry. So let's test it and see what happens. Let's say I enter 50. So it does print out 50. Basically that means I'm not it's not true. But if I enter 100, and it keeps asking me, I enter 100, what happens? The loop stop. But if I don't enter 100, you keep seeing do this. That's for this. I entered it. Okay, 8, 9. So it keeps doing that until I gain idea of what it is. And the reason why it's like that is because of this if condition we set inside here, that it must be equal. What is stored inside this entry must be the same as what we have here, this 100. Okay, so that is an example of an indefinite loops. It keeps iterating until you get the right condition. So we take a look at for loop. And please, if you do have a question, drop it in the comment section. Feel free to drop your question in the comment section. So the for loops iterate over a collection of items such as list or and run or dictionary. That's what we have here. And run a block of code which is stored inside. So let's look at this. We have a start here, and for this start, we check the condition the last item reached. It may look a little bit complicated, but it's really not. What they mean by the last item reached, let's say it starts from 0. The for loops go through 0, then it checks 0. Okay, I've gone through 0 before, so it jumps to 1 and goes through 1. Then before it goes to 2, it checks, did I go through 1 before? So that's basically what it does. Then once it's a no, it processes. If it's a yes, it stops. Here, I will go straight to the example. Python has a method called range. In this range, you have the beginning, the end, and the step. The step size actually tells you how to actually indicates the interval to which the numbers will be generated. So here we have an example 1, and we are using a range of 1 to 100, and the step size is set to be 10. So we just try it and see. Okay, so we print what the value of num. But if we don't want to print the value of num, what do? We can also put I here. This prints num 10 times. That's what I want you to understand. Ideally, you can print, if you remove this step size, okay, let me do it this way. Let me show you this example, then I'll show you something else. So you can see an interval of 10. 1 plus 10, you have 11. 11 plus 10, you have 21, and so on and so forth. That's what this is all about. But if we want to do it in a different way, we want to print out that num, and we want to print it out such that there's no step. What we are basically doing is that we're printing out 100 times. Okay, you can see this doesn't look nice. I don't want you guys looking at it. It makes it look awkward. So let's do that of I. So here we are printing the value of I. Okay, this looks fresh. You can give this to your friend to study it and know how to count from 1 to 100. So But when we put a step size, it takes note of that. Let's say the step size is 9. What happens? You see 1, 10, 19, 28, like that. So it keeps adding, using the step size to decide the next number. And here we can also try an example. If you see an error here, of course, you should be able to see an error by this time. If you still are not used to it, I will keep hitting hard on it for you to understand. Okay, what is the error? Indented block. So you have to understand that indentation is important in Python. So let me run this. Okay, basically what the code does is that we have instantiate sum to be 0, and we said for the range of I in the range of 1 to 100, it should keep adding the sum and be printing it. So the moment it adds to it, it print. Adds to it, it print. You can see the last variable that was summed together is 4,950, and that was what we print out here. So if we change this and we did let's say 25 at the step size of 25, let's see what we get. You see, that's what happened. Simply the first one is assumed to be 1 because that's where we are starting from. Then the subsequent one, it will now be 25 plus 1, then plus the next number. So we keep going that way and to get to the point of the last point. In this case, we have 4 of them. How many times can 25 go into 100? When you divide, that is 4 times. So we have the 4 numbers with considering our summation. So we can also come here, we can declare a list, and then we run a loop. We use a for loop to list them out. So the members of the list are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And we use a for loop to print the members. Then we can also be here. This is also another list containing string, and we can also print them out just as we did to integers or these numbers. So we have a nested for loop. Yes, it's possible to have a nested for loop. In fact, we use this a lot, especially in the computations, in mathematical computations. So the essence of this is that the for loop it picks the first number, then it prints out the first number. It doesn't go back. It come and Python will listen to this, then print out the number here. Once it's done with J, it goes back to I. So it processes I, then processes J, then go back to the beginning. So you can have loop nested, just like you have in if-else statement. Okay, so you can have them that way. Let me keep them short and see if we can this. Okay, so we can just play around with it. The first one here is 1, and the first one here is also 1. That's what you get. Then it goes back to print the second one. In this case, you're having 4, and for the second one, you're having 7. So it's actually very friendly. Yeah, let me put it that way. The next one here is to think of a practical example with while loop and some if-else statement included in it. But then there is an issue I would like to talk about. Actually, I do not keep them to remember them, so I normally run them then so that the error will be there. The error will remind me of what I was trying to point out. Okay, invalid syntax. Here, why is it invalid syntax? Do not forget, whenever you declare either a loop or an or a condition, you must always put a colon at the end of the line or the statement. So let's say 3, and So this is just to play with it and have this. Okay, here what we have here is very simple. First, we instantiate the variable. We take in 0, then the number of attempts. What we are trying to do is that we want a user to enter a number within the range of 10, 1 and 10. So we are now using a while loop and say while the value is greater than or equal to 1, or this or you are saying here in C++ um, or in MATLAB, you have to use something like that. Yeah, this one. That's what you have to use. But in Python, they try to make it very user friendly. So you see or. So now say or value is less than equal to 5. So meaning the value can be less than 5 or the value can be equal to 5. In this case, the value is greater than 1 or equal to 1. So having done that, we now say okay, ask user for the input. Once you get the input, store the number of attempts, how many times the user tried it. Okay, then we check again. So then we tell the user the number of attempts, and if the user have exhausted the number of attempts, you just print this for all attempts trial you didn't get it right, shame on you. So and the number of attempts is meant to be, I think, 10. Okay, I think I got since it's between 1 and 5, do not forget we set it to be between 1 and 5, so I got it. But if I do this, validate, I think there's something wrong with the program. So anyways, that's the point. There is just something to see how we can merge our while condition with an if else condition, so you can play with it and see what happens. You can modify it and so on. So if we come to the break and continue condition, we have the beginning, just very similar to for loop, but the point is there's the point where we break out of the loop after a statement. So this break is very important. This is what helps us to decide whether we should come out of the loop, because the point you've achieved your aim with a loop, there's no point iterating, so you break out of the loop. Right now we read an input, and then we said okay, for I in the range of 0 to 6, here is what we intend to do. If the number between 0 and 6 is equal to what the user entered, you should break out of the loop, print I and type end, then print done. But if it is not like that, what will happen? It keeps going back. So let's see. It tells you okay, in this case we entered 4. It counts 0, 1, 2, 3 and said done. And what we have here, we are printing I. Do not forget it's a for loop, so it keeps iterating since it has gotten the number. And we are saying that if the number is equal to, if I is equal to none, meaning that what we entered is 4, right? So when we entered 4, once it goes to 4 in this range, it stops counting. So let's try it again. Let's say 2. So you see 0 and 1. So once it gets to this, it stops counting. Once it gets to, because the count starts from 0, that's what we set here. So of course, maybe let me try something else, one thing before we continue. Let's say 8. What happens? So it counts to the limit, the maximum number set there, which is 6. So from 0 to 5, because it's starting from 0. So once it gets to 5, which is the 6th one, it stops. It can't get to 8 because the number here is not up to 8. so it breaks out of the loop. We can also have okay, one good thing we should note about break statement is that it can appear within anywhere within the block of code associated with the loop. So which can either be for loop or while loop, anyone. So which of course I re-emphasize here that it can basically mean that there can be statements before the break or after the break. So don't get it confused. And then here we'll talk more about continue. Yeah, those are very important. Continue is that if a particular condition has not been met, you want it to continue iterating. Unlike break, which if a particular condition is met, you break out of the loop. So here we defined a number within the range of 0 and 15. No step, we didn't include a step size. And it's not compulsory that you must include a step size. There must be a reason why you are doing something. So in a case like this, we expect you to have a reason why you want to include a step size. But for your understanding, you can do anything with the code. All right. At least this code cannot blow a bomb, so or cannot make a bomb to explode. So you have nothing to worry about. So for I in the range of 0 to 15, we print I, and then we check the modulus of I. And if it's equal to 1, we want it to continue. So, the modulus of this is actually the numbers. If it is 4, you have 2, no reminder. But if it is 5, 1 will be the reminder. And this is this. So basically, once it gets that, it continues to loop. But if it does not get that, what happens? We don't have an else statement here. So let's test our code and see what happens. Here we have all of this, print this, what can be done? Okay. Okay, let me change the range and set 5. How about that? What we see is this. Print. Okay. Have that, and then this. Okay. So what we are doing, if we get an even number, okay. What can you do about it? Okay. Now this is coming out of the loop itself. So the essence of this is you should continue. Hey, it's an even number, keep working. But in this case, if you have something like this, actually not an even number, this is what gives you an even number. If it is 0, it's an even number, but if it is not, it's an odd number. So what else? Okay, let me try something else. Let's comment it. Okay, so we want this to be printed out, and I the modulus of 2. So when we do this, what happens? Okay, it doesn't recognize this. Let me do that. Python is very sensitive to the indentation, so that's what you are getting. So don't get scared about it. So if we do this, what happens? Hey, it's an even number 1. It's an even number 1. Is 1 an even number? I guess so. I don't know. I don't think it's an even number. Even number starts from 2, right? And what I had here, that's because I didn't do this. Let me see. Okay, I think this is left for you to also play around with. It's a simple code just to check once a particular condition is met. The condition in this case is that once we find the modulus of this, if it is 0, we want it to continue looping. But if it is not 0, we want it to stop looping. So that's that. Then we now have the for while with else clause. In a for loop, you can have an else statement. Don't get it twisted. Okay, so the point I'm trying to make here is that it's not only in if that you find an else going with it. In Python, you can find an else under a for loop. So we take a look at this and we do that. Okay, so print done, then we reset I to be 0. That's the point here. So we said in the range of 5, so print I, so it prints 0, 1, 2. And again, do not forget, when you don't set the beginning of the range function, it takes a default of 0. And when you don't set the step size, it also takes a default of what? 1. So that is why it is increasing by 1 all through. So this is a for loop. Else, once it's done counting through this guy, it should just print done. That is what it does. And then we put this one here to reset the loop back to 0. So we can also do the same with while loop. It won't find it harmful. While loop will do the same for us. So we can have, you can see the S clause here, and there's no if around there. So it's very simple. Then we have the another example here, and the point here is to add 5 non-negative numbers supplied by the user. When we say non-negative numbers, we are talking about positive integers. So we instantiate, we put this to 0, then we print please provide 5 non-negative numbers when prompted. Then while count is less than 5, this is what we want you to do. Take an input, then if the input is less than 0, print negative numbers not acceptable. Break. So this is just a simple application of the while and the if statement, including break. So we just put everything together and apply it in an example to find the average of a number. But while doing that, we ensure that okay, here we have an indented block. You know why it is like this? Because you see here, this is where it stops. Once you have declared this while loop, you have to indent. So after doing that, okay, let's see. Okay, unexpected indent. Okay, yes. Then so indentation is very important. Do not forget. In order for me to do this properly, I think I may have to get rid of this and then just take that and do this. Okay, it's at the right place. Then this stays under, then this, just do that and enter it. And this comes here, this comes here, this comes here. And that's basically all there is to it. But the if and the else have to stay in the same vertical axis for it to work properly. So then the print, of course. Okay, we have this enter a number with a 5, and then said what's the division by 0 division error. So it's throwing an error to us, and the reason why it's doing that is because what we want is actually we are taking an input that is less than 5, I think. Let me see. int average sum. Okay, count is 0. Okay. We have to set count to be this. So average is 0. What about this? Average is 0. What about 7? Average is 0. So why is average 0? Is there no sum? So you have to play with this. We'll definitely have to continue this class because I think I am encountering a low battery currently. So I won't be able to take it from here. Though we have more to cover because we are going to talk about leaks, dictionary, and tuples. And